Hello, lovelies! So just a few weeks ago on Dinner Made Easy, I shared 3 amazing Asian-inspired recipes on my Better Than Takeout video, and you guys seem to eat it up, quite literally. So I'm back today with 3 more delicious Asian-inspired recipes that come together in a flash but are loaded with amazing flavor. Today we're going to get started with these amazing Singapore noodles. Now, if you've never had Singapore noodles as takeout, you are missing out on a seriously delicious dish. I absolutely love them and had no idea myself how easy they actually are to prepare at home. So for this yummy noodle dish, of course, we need to start with some noodles. In this case, I am using some nice thin vermicelli rice noodles. Now, the directions here are actually to bring your water to a boil, but then you turn the heat off on your water because these actually cook very, very quickly. So we're just going to pop them into our boiling water with the heat off like so, and they'll soften up really, really fast. And while that is happening, I can get to work on my stir fry. To get started, I've got my pan heating up over medium-high heat. I'm going to add a little sesame oil to that. If you're not a fan of cooking with sesame oil, always fine. You can swap in some flavorless vegetable or canola oil. Both will totally work in this recipe. Once that oil is nice and hot, we can go ahead and start sauteing some veggies. So I've got some finely sliced onion and some red bell pepper headed into the oil. I'm going to let those heat up for maybe 2 to 3 minutes, just until they soften. In the meantime, while that's heating up, let's talk about this baby bump. Are you kidding me? It's crazy. Once those have softened up, we'll go ahead and add some carrot to the pan. I've julienned my carrot in this case. You can also shred it with a box grater if you want to do that. The best part about cooking your carrots this way is that they cook lightning fast compared to, say, big chunks of carrots, which would take way too long to cook in a recipe like this. Once all our veggies are nice and soft, we can go ahead and add our shrimp to the pan. I love shrimp when it comes to weeknight cooking because, as you know, shrimp takes no time at all to cook. It's one of the fastest proteins out there. If you want to skip the shrimp in this recipe, you can go right ahead and add some tofu instead, or leave the tofu out and just keep it veggies. But I really think that this makes for a shrimp-pressive dish on a busy weeknight, don't you? Once our shrimp is pink and opaque, we can go ahead and start building in some flavor with a little bit of garlic and some freshly grated ginger. Obviously, classic flavors in any Asian cooking. We'll keep that moving for another minute or so until everything becomes nice and fragrant. And then it is time to add our noodles to the pan. Now, you can totally feel free to pour these into a colander in the sink and drain them. Or you can do what I'm gonna do and just move them from one part of the stove to the other using some tongs. This, my friends, is gonna be good. Once my noodles are in the pan, I'll go ahead and add some green to this dish with some beautiful snow peas. They cook up really fast, which I love. I'm gonna give all of that a good toss and then get it sauced up. I'll start with some soy sauce. To that, I'll add some fish sauce, and a little bit of agave or honey would also work really well here. You wanna just balance out all of those savory flavors with a touch of sweetness. That's why the agave is so handy in this recipe. And then what really sets Singapore noodles apart, curry powder. So I've got some curry powder headed in, as well as some turmeric. We'll give this all a quick toss, and honestly, within 2 to 3 minutes, this deliciousness is ready to serve. Now, I can fully admit I am obsessed with this recipe right now, as was our entire team. It got devoured after we finished shooting it. So that's always a really good sign. I would say it definitely belongs on your must-try list, as does this next dish, which is our Thai basil beef bowl. This dish is equally delicious and, dare I say it, even easier than our Singapore noodles. It all starts with a really yummy sauce that I'm gonna mix up ahead of time. I've got some soy sauce in my bowl. To that, I am adding some oyster sauce and some fish sauce. Lots of great flavor here. Don't knock it until you've tried it. If you're not a fan of those 2 things, this recipe could make you a believer. Next, I'm going to add some chili garlic sauce, which has a ton of great garlic flavor, but also a little bit of heat. I'm adding some honey for sweetness, and then I'm going to wrap it all up with a little bit of cornstarch. The reason we add cornstarch to a sauce like this is because the cornstarch is going to help everything thicken up and become nice and syrupy and help coat the beef in our stir fry. We're gonna whisk this all together, and then we can turn our attention once again to our non-stick skillet on the stove. I've got it heating up over medium-high heat. To that, I'm going to add a little bit of oil, and then once my oil is nice and hot, I'm going to get my beef into the pan. Now for this recipe, you have a ton of great options as to what kind of beef you want to use. Anything that's on sale at the supermarket will really do. The idea here is just to cut it into very, very thin strips. That way it cooks really quickly and gets tender more easily. Once your beef is almost cooked through, you can go ahead and start adding in the rest of your ingredients. So I've got one finely sliced onion headed in here. I've also got some red bell pepper and some green bell pepper. Once my beef is cooked through and my onions and peppers have had a chance to cook down and soften up a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and start loading in the flavor with some minced garlic and some freshly grated ginger. Then I'll get my sauce into the pan. In just a few minutes, it's going to thicken up and get really syrupy and start to coat everything. And that means it is time for our star ingredient, Thai basil. We're gonna just stir this in and you'll instantly be able to smell the difference. Thai basil has a really almost licoricey smell to it that is just so beautifully complemented with this beef. Now, if you can't find Thai basil, you could definitely use regular basil in a pinch here. But of course, I'm gonna say it. Thai basil is really the way to fly in this recipe. I'm just going to stir this up for another minute or so, just until that basil wilts down, and these are ready to be devoured. You can always serve it up with some rice or some quinoa. Trust me when I tell you, you will not have to worry about leftovers with this dish. It got eaten pretty quickly. Finally, on today's Better Than Takeout extravaganza, I have got a spring roll inspired stir fry for you vegetarians out there that I think you guys are going to love. Now, I am kind of in love with spring rolls, but I didn't want to deal with the fussiness of rolling them, so I basically turned all of their awesomeness into a stir fry. What is not to love about that? Once again, we're going to start by mixing up our sauce for this stir fry. Now, I'm using a combination of soy sauce, garlic, ginger, agave, and a little bit of hoisin sauce, which is super, super tasty. I'll whisk that up and set it aside. And then comes the time to bring it all together. So I have a pot of boiling water happening on one side of my stove where I am going to fire up my rice noodles. And then we will get some oil heating up once again in our non-stick skillet on the stove. Once that oil is nice and hot, we'll go ahead and add some onion and some mushrooms to the skillet. We're going to cook them, stirring them often until everything is soft and delicious. Then we'll add a little bit of crunch into the pan with some shredded green cabbage as well as some julienne carrot. We'll cook those up for another 3 minutes or so. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add some crumbled tofu to this. Tofu is such a great substitute for protein in a dish like this, and it makes it perfect for Meatless Monday. And then as soon as that starts getting heated through, we can go ahead and get our pasta into the skillet. Our final step, we'll be adding in all of this sauciness. Once everything is coated in all that good sauce, it is ready to be enjoyed. I like serving it with a sprinkle of sesame seeds and some finely sliced green onion for a little bit of color and even more wonderful flavor. And that, my friends, is dinner made easy times 3. I hope you'll give all 3 of these tasty stir-fry ideas a try. And if you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo because I love seeing your kitchen creations. As always, the recipes are listed in the description box below so you can take a look for them there. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there is lots more dinner deliciousness where this came from.